All right. So I'm good. Are we live, Josh? Can you tell?
We are live. Yep, we're live.
All right. All right. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Cameron Dunlap, and I'm joined by my friend and business partner, Mr. Josh Brown. Say, hey, Josh.
Hey guys, how you doing? Hope you're having a good one.
This is Real Estate Wealth Network Strategy Lab number 7, our 7th week during this pandemic. And I was saying to my wife this morning as I walked out the door, the news was on and it said something. They were talking about unemployment, and they said in the last 7 weeks of this pandemic. And I turned to her and I said, "Boy, the last 7 weeks feels about like a year to me." Yeah. Does it to you? What do you think?
Yes.
Josh?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. How about you guys? How long does it feel? You can put your comments below. And by the way, say your name and where you're from. We love seeing you guys each and every week. It's been pretty awesome, and the comments have been great.
You guys are the gas in this engine. So
that's right.
And so here we are. It's May 7th, 7th week of doing this, 7th week in this pandemic.
Feels like a year. I've gained some gray hairs.
Yeah, sure. And I think we probably all put on a few pounds, although I'm trying to do as much walking and working out as I can. My daughter and I do these long walks every day.
That's great.
So anyway, thrilled you're here. And like Josh said, please do put your comments in down below. Give us a like, give us a share, and we'll continue to do this for the time being. So the way we normally do this is we start out with some updates, some things that I'm observing in the marketplace, how they relate to real estate and us in general. And then we'll move into a Q&A session where you guys have submitted questions since the last Strategy Lab, and we're going to address as many of those as we can. I can assure you we won't get to all of them, but we'll do our very best. And if we don't get to yours, please don't be offended. We'll do our best to get to it next week. And
yeah, there's a ton of questions.
Say it again?
There's no way we're going to. So there's a ton of questions. There's no way we'll get to them all, unfortunately. Too. But
yeah, there really
a lot of really good ones, and some we can group together. I'm looking at them now. It's just there's a bunch, but
yeah, this week was we had an especially large number of questions come in, and we thank you for that. The way you submit a question, by the way, the most direct way that requires the least amount of work and effort on our part, and frankly makes it most likely that we'll get to it, is to send it to email it to comments at Real Estate Wealth Network. That's 4 words, realestatewealthnetwork.com. And then Josh and I manage those questions. We aggregate them, and then we address them here on these Strategy Labs. So over the last 7 weeks, we've shared an awful lot. We've shared some great tools. If you're just joining us, maybe this is your first one of our Strategy Labs. When this is over, I wouldn't leave right now, but scroll down in the Facebook timeline. You'll see our previous ones. And if you look in the comments, we have links to tools and handy items that we've suggested for you. Josh, your habit tracker is awesome. I love it. I'm using it. It's a great way to hold yourself accountable. Does appear we lost Josh. Well, he'll be back in a minute, I'm sure. So let's get into my observations over the last week. I've told you before, and the reason, by the way, it feels like the last 7 weeks has been more like a year is because I'm working, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, but because I'm motivated. I'm just hyper motivated right now. And I'm doing a lot of reading. I'm doing a lot of studying. I'm watching, I'm listening, and I'm trying to absorb as much as I can on a macro and micro level, but mostly macro. I've really become a student of macroeconomics. And then I try and come here and, sort of aggregate that down and share what I can with you guys. So out this morning, 3.2 million new unemployment claims last week. So it takes a few days for them to compile that. And so here it is Thursday, and they're telling us about last week. That brings the total now of unemployment claims over the last 7 weeks during this pandemic to 33 million people. And so I'm going to suggest that we are on the cusp of, if we haven't already gone and exceeded an unemployment scenario that is worse than that of the Great Depression. I think last week we were on the edge. I think this week pushes us over. April unemployment numbers from the Fed will come out tomorrow, and they'll give us their numbers based on the way they do their calculation, and just a straight up unemployment claims to the American workforce. We're at about, I want to say maybe 17 or 18%, but then they adjust that, and I do expect that to come in the mid to high 20s. And we'll see that tomorrow. So be watching for that. Airbnb, we've talked a lot about that. If you happen to see my pivot point report, we talked a lot about Airbnb and what's going on there, and if you're involved in Airbnb, the impacts and all that. But they just announced that they're laying off 25% of their global workforce. 25% of their global workforce. Just checking to see if Josh is coming back. Just one second. Let me text him. You gotta love this live stuff. Oh, there he is. Well, there he was. He was there for a second, and then he went away again. He must be having internet issues or something. So we'll keep going. That's okay. He'll join us when he can. Another interesting update. Have you been by or seen a picture of an NFL stadium lately? One of the big football stadiums. And have you noticed that in many cases their parking lots are completely full? And you might think, wait, I thought there were no football games. There aren't. What's going on is rental car companies are parking their cars at football stadiums because that's their overflow. They need the space. And Hertz is preparing to file bankruptcy. So I think the tsunami, the economic tsunami that this is going to produce, we are basically only just beginning to imagine and seeing just the tiny littlest beginning leading edge of that tsunami right now. I think that it's going to be epic. Every one of these strategy labs that we've done, I've tried, and I continue to try to remain very optimistic, and I'm looking at the future and the blue skies that are ahead, the opportunity that comes with every recession, and I keep my mind focused on that because frankly, what you focus on is what you get. You know that, you heard me say that. But I'll tell you, as far as the economic fallout from this, it's getting really challenging to remain optimistic about that because it doesn't look good at all. And every day we're in this, it's worse and worse. Now you might say, well, they're opening up across the country. Well, here's my thought on that. Yeah, they are. And I'll be willing to bet you $1 that we're going to get clamped down again. Because I think there are certain forces amongst us in politics and in the media that don't like the idea of us opening up, at least not until November or sometime after November. It has become abundantly clear to me that this is, to some degree, maybe, it depends on your perspective. Maybe it's 1%, maybe it's, 90%, but to some degree, this whole thing is politically motivated. Some of the numbers we're hearing, or we were hearing, are turning out to be completely false. They're projections. There's some question as to whether some of the deaths are, properly categorized. There's some questions about whether, there were are incentives to improperly categorize deaths. It's really troubling, and I think more and more of that is coming out as we go. But again, every day we're in this, and in New York, we are still completely locked down. Nothing. There's no hope of reopening anything in New York for the time being. And then there's a 4-phase plan, and each region, thankfully, Cuomo divided New York into regions. For a moment there, just at the moment, he realized that New York City is not all of New York. But there's 7 criteria that each region has to meet before they can begin the 4-step opening process. And one of them is testing. And I think what's going to happen is testing is going to create a surge in cases that were there anyway. And then now you'll fail on that. You'll pass on the adequate testing, but then you'll fail on the number of cases or the trajectory of those cases because of the testing. I was on a Zoom meeting yesterday with our the member of the House of Representatives for this area, the 29th District of New York. His name is Tom Reed. This guy I've known for, I don't know, 15 years. Our wives are friends, and he's in the House of Representatives. He did a Zoom with local business owners, and of course I'm one. And he said yesterday that he believes that Cuomo's goal is to keep playing the game, keep moving the goalpost, keep sort of juggling, and keep New York closed until September or later. Now, when I heard that, I thought, okay, that's politically motivated. And I don't mean what Tom Reed said. I mean, if what he's saying is correct, then there's clearly political motivation here. Anyway, I don't want to, I try to stay away from politics. It's pretty hard to. Moving on. He's back. My gosh. I kept going without you. I knew you'd be back eventually.
Thank gosh. I felt so bad. I was like, what is going on? My internet went down. I had to restart my entire machine. I was like, I hope he's still going.
Oh yeah. I'm just, you know me, I get on a roll.
That's awesome.
And I knew you'd
Sorry
be back, and I saw
guys.
you were back for like a second once or twice, and then you were gone again.
Internet.
All right, so next thing. I was reading this interesting article, and it said that a survey shows a majority of U.S. workers want to continue working from home. So think about that. The majority of U.S. workers want to continue working from home. So we collectively as a nation of workers have decided we kind of like working from home and that we can be productive, and that commute sucks and we don't want to do that. And, we have more free time because we don't have to commute, and, we have more time and we can have lunch with our spouse or our kids. And so I'm not surprised to hear that, but here's what I think may come of that. I believe there's a good chance this is going to impact the value of office space, commercial real estate, specifically office space. And in fact, check this out. Barclays chief executive, guy named Jess Staley, said last month, I think the notion of putting 7,000 people in a building may be a thing of the past. And we will find ways to operate with more distancing over a much longer period of time. So there's the CEO of Barclays, which is one of the world's largest employers, big bank, financial institution, basically saying, we don't want to be involved in office buildings anymore. So that's interesting. And I think there are the very, very large, financial and employment hubs, New York, Miami, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, the big downtown office building complex, sort of as part of our overall economy, I think is going to feel this pretty bad.
Wow.
Yeah. And here's another thought. Why even return to work if the unemployment benefits are better than what you are making at work? Now, Josh, you said something before we got on live here about a note you got from South Carolina. Tell them about that.
Yeah. So I got an email yesterday, actually, from the state of South Carolina that said if you are on unemployment and it was a warning email. If you're on unemployment and your previous employer offers you the ability to come back and you say no, you could lose your benefits. I didn't look into it. I'm not on unemployment, never been on unemployment, luckily. But I guess they just send it to all state residents, and I got it. And I thought, that's an interesting email to come from the state, kind of scaring folks into not sitting on their butts. I don't know how many will take them up on it, but and like you were saying earlier, who knows if they're actually going to pull the benefits from people.
If they'll enforce it. So here's my thought on that. Red states will, blue states won't.
Yeah. That's pretty typical.
Now, that extra $600 a month that's going out to unemployment, to people on unemployment over and above their normal unemployment benefits, which I believe is in 42 states. I was having a conversation with somebody about this. I thought it was national, but
so did I.
The last number I saw was 42 states. I imagine some states like Wyoming and Idaho may not have instituted that, where there's very little impact. But that is said to run out on July 31st. And so the thing I was reading was, it was basically saying, you know, if you think being on unemployment and the money is great, okay, it is, but watch out. If you wait till after July 31st to go back and find a job, there may not be any, because there are going to be something on the order now as of, last week, 33 million Americans looking for work. And that's a little bit of competition. So I had a meeting yesterday with my general manager at the hotel, which if you've been following along here for these 7 now strategy labs we've done, it's closed, and it's been closed since the 22nd of March, which is right around 6 or 7 weeks. And we moved this hopeful opening date out a couple of times. We went from April 17th, which was a Friday, to May 15th, which is next Friday. And now yesterday we sat and we talked about it. You know, there's very little demand. New York, they keep moving the goalpost. The team, the general manager, I'm keeping employed at my expense because I don't want to lose her. And, she's that important to me. And then I have my engineer who's there part-time. He's there half the day every day doing, deep maintenance that we now have time and the ability to do. Well, we decided yesterday that we're going to push the open date out now to June 15th, whatever. I'm hoping that's a Thursday or a Friday, but June 15th. And that's right before a big race weekend here at Watkins Glen, where we have a whole ton of reservations that are prepaid. We would literally have to refund their money or give them future credit, if we're not open that weekend. But I have a sneaking suspicion that my big concern, and I'm sure you can understand this, is that, my loss right now is very well contained. The hotel's closed. Our expenses, we've ground down to almost zero. Our utilities, we're not buying any food. We're not, my staff is on furlough, and so I've got my expenses down to something that's manageable. My concern is that the minute we open, my expenses go boom, they balloon, and our income doesn't come anywhere near meeting that because of demand. And I opened into greater losses than I'm incurring right now with the building sitting empty. In fact, I have one friend who suggested to me, and I might have mentioned this on an earlier strategy lab, he suggested to me, he said, you should just stay closed till next spring. And I thought, that's something to that. But then I end up, in a jam with my team because, they will have moved on by then, I presume. And so, that's a conundrum over there. I don't know what to do about that. However, here's something that I'm learning about that I want you to learn about. It's called the Net Operating Loss Carryback, NOL carryback. So this is part of the CARES Act, and it is an opportunity, and it's time limited. It's an opportunity for active investors. It doesn't work for passive investments, but for active investors to take losses that they incur in 2020 or had incurred previously, but couldn't realize because they didn't have enough active income to offset that. So they had a loss that exceeded their net income, which is very common, by the way. You might have made a lot of money. It felt like in your pocket you brought in cash, but on your tax return you showed a loss because of depreciation and all the things. Showing a loss is very common. Just ask Donald Trump. And so what the CARES Act allows you to do is take those losses and go back 5 years. So let's say a 2000, most of us haven't filed 19. I haven't. I haven't even filed the extension. That got moved to July. But so with your 18 tax return, you can go back 5 years, take the loss or losses and apply them in reverse. So let's say you had a loss in 18 and you paid a ton of tax in 14. You can take that loss from 18, go back and apply it to your 2014 return, amend that return, and now get a refund for the taxes you paid in 14 that have now been offset by your loss in 18.
Oh, wow.
So I'm network with a lot of big time real estate guys, and one of them had his accountant on a Zoom meeting for just his, kind of closest friends and stuff the other night. And I had never met his accountant, or and he did a timely, certainly, and a very concise presentation on this NOL carryback. And I am going to look into it very carefully. And by the way, if you suffer business losses this year in 2020, you'll be able to apply them to gains in previous years and potentially get yourself a tax refund. He gave an example of one of his clients who's a real estate investor who's shown big losses on paper, and by carrying them back, he was able to get her a tax refund of a couple $1 million. Now, clearly, she, that was a lady client, is paid a lot of tax and has a lot of property and stuff. But listen to me now: if you own and hold property, whether it's residential or commercial, and you're actively involved in that process, you're going to want to talk to your accountant about it. You're going to want to look at this. This is a potential benefit to us as real estate investors that's part of the CARES Act that no one's really talking about. And I guarantee you that the reason this is in the CARES Act is because we have a real estate investor in chief. So think about that for a minute.
Yep.
So anyway, I like I say, I am doing an enormous amount of studying and learning. I'm taking this opportunity to just enrich myself in every way possible, and learn as much as I can. And this is something I'm really digging into, and I wanted to share with you. It's not going to apply, for all of you, but have a conversation with your accountant about this. There might be significant cash available to you through amending returns and getting tax refunds.
That's great.
Yeah, interesting stuff. There's a fourth sort of, there are these bailout programs, whatever you want to call them. We've done 3 so far. By the way, I did apply for a PPP loan for our business, Josh's and ours, for this business. And we got the loan, and it got funded yesterday. So we got our PPP funded yesterday. Interesting, scary. It's certainly going to come with strings, and we don't even have full clarification on it yet, which is part of what makes it a little scary. But for sure, worst case scenario is we pay it back. Best case scenario is we follow the rules, which I intend to do, and I have already set up all the sort of framework to do that, to follow the rules and get most or all of it forgiven. You, as a sole proprietor, an independent contractor, can apply for a PPP loan. Do you want to? Maybe. I would suggest if you've suffered a loss of income, then you probably do, because then you can, utilize it in a way that it's most likely to be forgiven. I did not apply for a PPP loan at the hotel because it's mostly payroll, right? It's Payroll Preservation Program. I think that's what it stands for. And so I don't have enough payroll at my hotel to really make it worth doing. I did do an EIDL, and that did get $10,000 wired right into the hotel's account, and that's immediately forgiven. Whether I continue and actually do an EIDL loan, I probably won't. But I got that too. So the programs are working, and it's not like me. I have never in my life have I been willing to, or even contemplated taking a handout or a bailout, but I did not hesitate for a second on any of this stuff, just because it's there. And you know what? I don't know. Let me finish this thought, and then I'll sort of sum it up with what I'm thinking now. It'll make more sense if I keep going. So there's now a growing movement to put this fourth one together. Trump was talking about it, I think, yesterday. But instead of it being a big spending program, another big spending program, what they're really looking to focus on is pro-growth policies. So to stimulate the economy, not, hand out helicopter money, because they've already spent about $3 trillion on the relief up till now. Now, the Dems are looking for big state bailouts. The Republicans are saying, no, why should a state that's well managed bail out a state that isn't? And but I think what they're going to do is they're going to compromise like they always do.
Mm-hmm.
There will be some state bailouts and there will be some more spending. But I think what this is setting up for is give the Dems what they want, give the Republicans what they want, and everybody wins. What the Republicans are looking for is a payroll tax cut, which would be huge for employers. Immediate expensing, right? So part of the 2017 Tax Act allowed you to 100% expense what's considered personal property for your business. So if you bought a truck or an airplane or a piece of equipment or whatever, you could expense that in year one, the entire purchase price. No depreciation schedule of any kind. Expense it in year one. That helped to spur the economy big time because now businesses have a great incentive to go buy that new piece of equipment they've been waiting on because financing's dirt cheap and they get to expense it, which is a great tax benefit. Well, what they're talking about is actually broadening that. How I suppose that would mean they would allow more types of things to be 100% expensed in year one. They're talking about meals and entertainment being fully deductible again. That for quite a while, meals were 50% deductible, and then it couldn't be extravagant. And entertainment, that deduction got wiped out altogether. So having the box. At the down at Auburn, where my daughter goes to college, you could, if you make a donation to the college of $200,000, you get box seats for all the home games for the season, right? Well, that's considered an entertainment expense, and a lot of businesses would do that, and they'd write it off. Well, they took that away, and it crushed entertainment, sports, all of that. Bad. Well, they're talking about bringing that back so that is deductible again. What that'll spur people to do is to travel and to go to restaurants and to get out and send their employees and get us back to a place where we where we've been. Corporate liability limits. I don't think the Republicans are going to do another program without corporate liability limits, and I for one am really in favor of this because one of the reasons I am in no hurry to open that hotel is I'm scared to death of being sued by an employee who claims they got COVID-19 in my hotel, or by a guest who claims they got COVID-19 in my hotel, regardless of the extent of, that we go to clean and disinfect. Because, there's just call Saul. You wait. And I heard that some people have already seen this. There's going to be TV commercials that say, did you get the COVID? Well, just call Saul and I'll get you millions of dollars. I got to believe that injury attorneys are looking at this COVID-19 thing as the greatest gift in their entire lifetimes.
Licking their chops. Yeah.
Exactly. Licking their chops. And, so I'll be honest with you. I've got my losses to a point where being closed, I'm okay with it. It's 5 figures a month, but I'm in a place where, okay, I can survive that for a while. I want to wait and let the dust settle a little bit and see, what the heck does it look like out there? Turtles coming out of their shells. We've talked about that. One of my greatest fears is liability. Hotels are lawsuit targets. We're in the middle of 2 right now as it is. Before this whole COVID thing. I don't need to get into that. But and I wouldn't be surprised if insurance, so our insurance is coming due in June, where we renew. And I'm very fearful that there's going to be some sort of language in there that says, if you're sued for COVID-19 liability, you're not covered. In which case, I may take that idea and stay closed for a year. I don't know. However, the real estate investor in chief is pushing this one hard. He wants to see it. So does Mitch McConnell and the guys that are the Republicans.
Yep.
Now there's all kinds of union and pro-workforce type organizations that are saying, no, you can't do that because now the employers won't be held accountable. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's a way to look at it, but this employer is just not going to employ.
Right. And there'll be many more who do the same thing.
Yeah, I don't figure I'm weird or different from a lot of people. I mean, across the board, not at the moment, but across the board, I typically have 40 or 45 employees. That's not a lot, but it's enough. It's plenty.
Right.
Universal income. That one got brought up. Read it in an article yesterday as part of what the Dems are pushing for in this next thing. Some sort of universal basic income. And then a national housing subsidy, rent subsidy is what they're really calling it. And that would be administered through the FHA. So it would kind of be like Section 8 on steroids. I have a friend who's a super smart guy. He's a macro economics nut. And he's been talking about three things for the last 8 weeks or more. One is migration from densely populated living, working, and entertainment environments. People heading out of the big cities, moving back to the suburbs, moving to the country. The likelihood of some sort of basic universal income, and the likelihood of some sort of housing or rent subsidy like Section 8 on steroids. He's been talking about that for the last 10 weeks. And I'll be darned if I'm not starting to see evidence of that, in the mainstream now.
Wow.
Here's one other thing, and then we'll move on. So I was reading an article about bankruptcies, and this was a comment from Jenny Dolling, who's a bankruptcy attorney in Palm Desert, California, who serves on the American Bankruptcy Institute's Chapter 13 Advisory Committee. So clearly a knowledgeable lady in the arena of bankruptcy. Her comment is, I'm gearing up for a tsunami of new bankruptcy cases. I think there will be a whole lot more people filing than anyone's ever seen before.
Yep.
Do you, Josh, me, you watching us from wherever you are, do you have any reason to think that's not correct? I mean, I think we're looking at a higher level of bankruptcy, both personal and corporate, foreclosures, both personal and corporate, than ever before. I honest to gosh, I think we can't even imagine the fallout from this and how long it's going to take to heal.
Yep.
The upside is we are real estate investors, and
That's right.
is literally a safe haven where we can help solve people's problems and then help put people in houses that they want. And there's a lot of questions about how we're going to do that as things evolve, and we're going to get into that. But suffice to say that, this is my fifth disaster, 4.5 if you think .com and 9/11 kind of ran together. There was a recession then. And with the exception of the 2001 recession, after every recession, there was a significant housing collapse and a humongous opportunity for investors. And in each of those cases, and without a doubt, this one that we're on the cusp of, I have and absolutely will make a fortune. There's no doubt in my mind. In fact, I think about the hotel and where I am with that, and that's not good. But I'm going to come through it. I'll figure it out. It'll work out. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to be building the biggest fortune of my lifetime over here at the same time. So I think it would be easy to be depressed right now for you, for me, but I'm not. I'm motivated. I'm energized. I'm excited because I know the opportunity is coming and it is going to be epic. And you might think, well, doesn't that just make us bottom feeders? No, what that makes us is an integral, frankly, irreplaceable part of the recovery that will come. We as a nation won't recover as quickly without real estate investors.
Yep.
It takes real estate investors to fix a broken real estate system. We
Yeah.
are the answer to what's coming. We're not bottom feeders. And what we do is we help people with problems. We help them solve that problem, that seller who needs to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And then we help the buyer or the tenant who needs housing but can't acquire it easily enough because they have damaged credit, or they're unable to qualify at the apartment complex because they have very stringent qualifying criteria, or they can't get a mortgage because they've got damaged credit. We're going to have an entire wave of people who are going to be displaced and then looking for housing, who have damaged credit, and who the banks won't talk to, but we will. And it is we who are going to fix this problem.
Amen. Yeah, I totally agree. We're the gear that makes the recovery happen. And without us, it would be a lot slower. And so, yes, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And is that good for real estate investors? Yes, but we've always seen ourselves as helpers, not take advantage of us. So we're going to get out there. We're going to help as many of these millions and millions of people as we can. We're going to make a fair profit in doing so, and we're going to help recover the country while we're doing it. So,
that's right. Okay, so let's dig into the questions, Josh. We've got a ton of them here. All right, so just a couple housekeeping items before we dig in, and this is where we head into like the second part of what we do on these strategy labs. Number one, please leave a comment, a like, or a share below here if you're live with us on Facebook. And if you happen to be watching this on a replay later, either on Facebook here, again, please comment, share, or if you're watching this on a replay on the blog, please leave a comment there as well. The blog you'll find at CameronDirect.com, and right up there at the top row of tabs, there's the blog, and you can go there. By the way, we're in the process of moving that blog from CameronDirect.com over to RealEstateWealthNetwork.com, so that'll be happening soon.
Yep.
And the way that the way to submit a question that is the most expedient and has the least amount of friction and gives you the greatest likelihood of us addressing it is by sending it by email. Now, if you send an email right now, we're not going to see it. However, if you send an email now or after the show, this particular presentation, we'll see it and put it in the queue to the best of our ability for the next strategy lab. Is to send that. Now, to send it to a special email address we set up, it's comments, plural, comments at realestatewealthnetwork.com. That's 4 words, realestatewealthnetwork.com.
Yeah, right down there.
Yep. And Chelsea, if you wouldn't mind in the comments there, would you just reiterate that so that the folks can see that in the comments as well? All right.
One of the things, Cam, that I've noticed after I go back and, because once we air this live, it goes and it gets saved to Facebook and you can rewatch it. And I've noticed that a lot of folks are putting in, they're sort of adding their 2 cents to what we say about, we're getting questions, they're adding their 2 cents. I think that's great. Let's, this is a community of people now. We've come together. There's hundreds of people watching these things. Add your feedback in there. Start conversation, and feel free to use this world here that we've created on Facebook and through these questions to get more information, to create a closer connection with people. But feel free to add your feedback, not just send questions to us as well. You can do that below.
Yeah, absolutely. And we continue to work in fun deals even now.
Yep.
We've talked about it plenty. We had a title agent on with us last week. If you weren't on the strategy lab number 6, if you missed it, you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. You'll find it very interesting. We had one of the closing agents that we work with a lot come and share her thoughts and comments on what's going on right now. It was really enlightening. All right, Josh, you start. You've got a whole bunch that you're going to address, and so go for it.
So the first question today is actually a great example of someone who sent an email into comments at Real Estate Wealth Network during last week's strategy lab. So it's getting answered now. Larry, thank you so much for sending that in. His question was, what strategy do you recommend for contacting cash buyers on the cash buyer data feed to find out what they want to buy so that I know what to look for and what would be embraced by that cash buyer? And I think there's really, you have 2 options. You can either physically or through the phone talk to the cash buyer, or you can use the cash buyer data feed to go through and you can actually see their past transactions within the cash buyer data feed So you can see they're buying 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses in this particular zip code or city or state. And what you can do is say, oh, I see that they've bought 10 houses over the last 120 days in this town. And they've all been 3-2s that are 1,700 square feet. Well, now you know, based on their actions, what they like to buy. You don't have to talk to them ahead of time to figure that out. So Larry, there's one way. The other way is to dial them up and tell them what you do. I'm an investor in this area. I'm always finding properties, wondering what it is you're looking for, and I'll give you a call once I find it, and tell me to put them on the short list. Most people who are cash buyers who are looking for properties are looking for people to find them really good deals. So if you could find them a good deal, they're going to pay you for it. And those would be the two ways that I would say you could figure out what it is they're buying. One involves the old school strategy of just talking to someone. And the other involves sort of, a little bit of reconnaissance work through the cash buyer data feed, which has all the data right there for you and ready to roll.
Yeah, and I'll add to that real quickly. An old saying from a friend of mine that I knew for many, many years, is sadly no longer with us, but he always said it's easier to find a house for a buyer than it is to find a buyer for a house. And that's a little counterintuitive. I didn't say that backwards.
Right.
It's easier to find a house for a buyer than to find a buyer for a house. So when you know what your buyer's looking for based on their pattern or what they tell you, it's easier to find a house for him or her than hope that he or she buys the next house you have from you. Make sense? Okay, Paul, he sent in a couple of 3 staccato questions. I'm going to address them all real quick. This was from last week. Hopefully you're here with us now, Paul. Do the recent developments blow up any meaningful days on market averages for a given neighborhood? That is, holding times are more likely to be extensive. Yeah, I think looking at days on market right now is there's so much of what we focus on, metrics that we focus on, are in a state of disarray at the moment that I'd say that DOM is one that, I'm not going to discount it as meaningless, but I think you need to take it all with a grain of salt. And I think it's reasonable to expect much greater days on market for houses as we go forward. There's always going to be activity. There's going to be bargain hunters out there that are way too early, and paying too much. That sort of thing happens. But I think that is a metric that is in a state of disarray at the moment, but will always be very meaningful. Second, should investors now keep focused on the lower end of the market, meaning entry-level homes, expecting more expensive homes to be delayed or avoided altogether? Look, here, I'm glad you asked that question, Paul. I have been, short of banging my fist on the table, telling you guys to focus on entry-level houses for as long as I've been sharing my knowledge in real estate. Entry-level houses. And the reason is because there's so many reasons that it's ridiculous, but mostly you have the biggest buyer pool, and they're the least picky, and they're the most well-supported in terms of financing, because that's who FHA, VA, and USDA finance, are entry-level buyers. So it's the most liquid part of the real estate industry, period. That's the term to think about, liquidity. So not now with this mess, but always focus on entry-level workforce housing. That is, if you're planning to wholesale to rehabbers, wholesale to landlords, rehab it yourself, or buy and hold it and be the landlord. Entry-level workforce housing. It's the safest place to be, the least risk, the least amount out of your pocket, the least effort, and it is the most liquid. You will find, if you decide one day, oh my gosh, I need to sell 5 houses right now because of something, you'll find that if you have 5 entry-level houses to sell, they will go very quickly, as opposed to having 5 move-up or luxury houses that could take you who knows how long to sell them. And here's another thing. The McMansion days, I think the days of McMansions being the hot thing are behind us. I think they're over. And I built and lived in a McMansion for a long time. Josh was there many times. sold it in the summer of 2018. So not, maybe 18 months or 20 months ago, something like that. Couldn't be one bit happier that I did that, because big, huge, luxurious houses are, I think, going to be frowned upon more than ever as we move forward, because I think we're entering into a simpler time. And I think that our standard of living is going to decline, what that means is those McMansions are going to be worth much less, and there's going to be less demand for them. Entry level, or here's another way to frame it. I only started using this term maybe in the last 24 months, workforce housing. Okay, third one from Paul, and then I'll turn it back over to you, Josh. I joined a national RIA organization, but now fear attending such a large group gathering. Well, I understand what you're saying. We have certainly been trained to fear that. He said, can I find something of similar value, something online with similar value? Yeah, you're here, right now. We will very soon resume doing what we call my private inner circle. It's an inexpensive way to have access to me and my team for Q&A and to be part of a community. And so you can look for that sort of being re-engaged or re-emerging. What we've done, if you're a part of the Dealmaker webinars that I've done for the last 18 years, 16 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been a while.
What we did was we said, hey, we're going to put those on hold for right now. Please join us here for these strategy labs, because I've only got so much time. But you're gonna see Josh, myself, my organization, we're going to continue to evolve and embrace you and give you a chance to embrace us and the other members of this community. We are a community. We always have been, and we're going to enhance that community aspect and become and evolve in a very positive ways with regard to the concept of community. So I'm glad you're here, Paul, and thank you for your questions. Take it away, Josh.
You got it. This one's from Steve. He says, I'm not getting many people calling me back or responding to my texts or emails. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Steve, because I don't have specific examples to look at of what you're saying and doing, I'm going to have to make some assumptions here. By the way, for those of you guys watching below, if you want to stick a copy of a marketing piece you've used, maybe in a future strategy lab, I could show that and maybe give a quick rapid fire, here's what I would do to increase conversion type thing, do a quick run through on them. But you need to email to comments at Real Estate Wealth Network, a marketing piece. So send me a marketing piece. Maybe we'll go through it in the next strategy lab. Steve, if you're not getting many people calling you back, the first thing that runs to my mind is, what is many? Have you called 10 people? Have you called 15, 20? Have you called 300? In fact, I don't even want to say the word call, because the exact words you used were text or email. And I want to point something out. Texting and emailing is a great way to reach people, but it's not the most effective way to reach people. That's, texting is what I do if I call someone and they don't answer. And I know that a lot of us would rather text people than talk to them on the phone because it's less intrusive. It's also less burden on me as the person who's starting the text or starting the conversation. It's, if they don't answer me, I just move on. I don't have to have an uncomfortable conversation. I get it. I get why text is so popular, and I love it for lots of reasons because of that. But when I use just text and emails, I'm going to get a much, much lower response rate because it's just not as effective as calling someone and talking to them live. So my first thing to you, which I have to assume here is you're not calling people or you're not calling all of them, is to start dialing the phone numbers. If you want to get a high response rate, you've got to start talking to people, because they will, leaving messages for them to let them know you're a real person, you're not an auto dialer. I'll tell you, my cell phone here is blowing up 3 times a day with some kind of, robo dial call from somebody about, a car that I owned 6 years ago that's saying the warranty is expired and they're trying to sell me something. I can tell it's a recording the second I listen to it and I just hang up. Okay. Versus someone who calls and leaves a custom message and I call them back because I'm actually interested in what they have to say. So make sure that when you're contacting your sellers, you're leaving real messages, use their address, use your name, make it sound friendly. If you're going to send texts or emails only, you need to expect a lower response rate, which means you need to do a lot more texting and emailing. You can also try things in your text or emails that create open loops. Like, I've got a very important piece of information about your property at 123 Main Street. Please call me back as soon as possible. That's it. What does that do? It creates an open loop. Oh my God, what is this piece of information? Do I really need it? Let me call and find out. The bad news about using a strategy like that is you might irritate some sellers. However, if they get super irritated with you, maybe they're not as motivated as you need them to be anyway. So that would be some just quick suggestions for you, Steve, without seeing specific marketing examples of what texts or emails you're sending. I think that if you take a little bit of that advice, you'll get a lot better results. So there you go. You're up, Cam.
Okay. Melvin, I got two from Melvin back to back. I'll address them both. They're pretty short and sweet. Are we still using an assignment of contract to wholesale in Florida or doing double closings only? You can use an assignment of contract everywhere in the USA. In Illinois, you'll either need to have a real estate license or have an agent represent you to do it. In Oklahoma, it sounds like there's a law that may go into effect here relatively soon on that subject. I will tell you, though, that assignments are more and more looked upon negatively. So you may find it harder to find a closing agent who will close a deal with an assignment involved. They're out there. The closing agent we interviewed last week on the Strategy Lab, she told us she does mostly assignments. And so, but you're going to want to also concern yourself with, whether or not you're able to find a title agent that's willing and able to do that. A double closing, not every title agent will do that either. And when I say title agent, I mean, title company, attorney, depending on how you close in your state. Not every closing agent will do a back-to-back closing either. But what we find is that there is more and more scrutiny on assignments every day.
Yeah.
Now, right now, certainly the attention is off of that, at least by lawmakers. So, all right. And then had another one also from Melvin. He asked, what are the words for the abbreviation MPP on the recession blueprint? So we have if you attended the Pivot Point report, there was a pandemic recession investing blueprint that we gave out to the folks that were there. You may have another version of that called the secret blueprint if you're a Trifecta program owner or a Four Pillars program owner, or if you've ever been to one of my Rapid Results Investor Summits, you have that blueprint. And what MPP, and Melvin, you wrote MMP, but I know you mean MPP, stands for is maximum purchase price. So
the most you can pay.
Exactly. That's the most you can pay, plain and simple. I was going to say that you may have heard of it as maximum allowable offer. You may have heard of it as MOA elsewhere. I don't think that defines it well enough, because your maximum purchase price is not your maximum allowable offer. My maximum allowable offer is going to be less than my maximum purchase price. And then that way I give myself the ability to come up a little on price and make the seller feel like they're a master negotiator. I think MPP is crystal clear as to what that means. That is the most you can pay. Glad you asked.
Also, Chelsea, I know you're watching this. If you'll put a link to that Pivot Point report that Cam did in the chat below us, that might be helpful for those of you who didn't see it and you want to check it out. You can do that.
So wait a minute, the report or the blueprint?
I'm sorry, the webinar. We have a file of the webinar. They can go back and rewatch the.
Yes. If you want to see the Pivot Point.
Yes. Presentation.
It was something. It was very different from anything I've ever done before in terms of content. And so it was really a sort of investing during a pandemic and the the recession that follows type of
Yep.
training.
Yeah. Okay, this one, how can I find a motivated seller list? I'm looking for a list that has out-of-state owners who own property in the state of Georgia. Charlotte, that's really easy. MotivatedSellerDataFeed.com is one great way to find a list of motivated sellers. It's obviously our product. We're very proud of it. We work hard every day to make sure the information, the data is not just fresh, but also, we've got a data science background in our business. So we're constantly trying to tweak and hone in and make the data even more powerful for you as a real estate investor. You can check it out. There's a short 3-day trial that you can use to look at the data and see if it's right for you. So MotivatedSellerDataFeed.com will get you there.
Okay. Julie, you're up. Julie said our 3 biggest hurdles are: 1, securing funding without having our personal credit pulled. She doesn't like that because when you get your credit pulled, it adds an inquiry to your credit report, which lowers your FICO score. And it does temporarily. I forget, it lasts 8 or 10 weeks and then the inquiries fall off, but it's a concern. And that's, so a couple thoughts on that. One is, some lenders will do what they call a soft credit pull, where it doesn't put an inquiry on your record. But what I would suggest to you, in 2 words, the solution to that is private lenders. And what I don't mean is professional private lenders that are in the business of lending money to real estate investors. I mean folks who have assets that they don't know where to go with, and probably don't know the first thing about being a private lender in real estate until you describe it, explain it to them, and so they may. So here's my ideal private lender is someone who either has never heard of it, and now discovers the fountain of youth, because you can pay them a much higher rate of return than CDs and other money markets and other low risk investments. And so you effectively give them a huge raise. They may be on a fixed income, right? And then there's the private lender that maybe's dabbled a little, done a loan or 2, and has kind of understands it, but isn't in the business of being a private lender. As soon as you're working with a private lender who's in the business of being a private lender, they're going to pull your credit. They're going to scrutinize everything at a much higher level. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, unless you're trying to avoid that for legitimate reasons, like you don't want inquiries. But I've been working with private lenders for 25 years, with the exception of a couple of storage facilities and a hotel that I can almost see out my window here. I haven't been to a bank for a mortgage in those 25 years. Every deal that I've needed funding for, I did with private lenders. And I'm not talking about professional ones. I'm talking about regular folks like you and me.
Yep.
And by the way, with interest rates as low as they've been, and now even lower, private lenders that haven't even discovered the concept are suffering, quietly, because they're seeing their incomes. These are folks that look at low risk investments. They're living off their savings, if you will. The stock market, if anybody doesn't believe it's volatile now, you're asleep. A lot of folks who are living on a fixed income have been for a long time, uncomfortable with the stock market and the volatility there. And when they discover that if they lend you $100,000 on your deal for 3 months, 6 months, 10 years, depending on your needs, their needs, and you can pay them 5%, 6%, 7% interest, which is deductible to you.
Yep.
You can literally change their life. I have one private lender I work with. When I pay her off, she gets mad at me. Yeah. And so I have to go and find another place to put her money, because she gets a new car every 2 years. Thanks to her investments paying so well, in large part them being me. Yeah. So, that's a very common scenario. Hard money lenders. This is biggest hurdle number 2. Hard money lenders. They want high monthly payments during the rehab repair timelines. Private lenders. Work with private lenders. Now, some prefer a longer term sort of annuity kind of thing, and they're better suitable for, say, a rental property. but some are okay with shorter term loans, and you may have to pay a little more interest. But they may be willing to let the interest accrue with no payments, and then you pay that interest when at the time of the sale. That's very common. Hard money lenders, some hard money lenders will let the payments accrue as well. But I hear you, very expensive. And by the way, I expect the cost of hard money to go way up. It's been as cheap as I've seen it in 25 years for the last 5. I mean, we're talking single digit interest rates, low or no points, origination points and things like that. Super competitive, Wall Street money in the game.
Yep.
Poof, gone. In fact, I think many hard money lenders are either going to exit or are going to raise their rates dramatically.
Agreed.
Third hurdle, very hard to locate back-to-back closers, meaning closing agent and folks who understand the assignment process. Contact us. We can make a referral to a closing agent in almost every state. No, I can't say every because there are some states we have not funded deals in. There aren't many, but there are a few. But in most every state, we're going to be able to refer you to a good investor-friendly title agent that I think can help you with that. And again, I point back to my comment about assignments a minute ago. They are getting looked at negatively more and more every day. And I don't expect that sentiment or that trajectory to change as we go forward. So I'm going to suggest use a back-to-back closing, because then when you do a back-to-back closing, you clearly had the intent to buy and sell real estate. When you do an assignment, you didn't buy it or sell it. You kind of got paid to put the buyer and seller together, which is where the problem is. That starts to look like brokerage. But when you do a back-to-back transaction, you buy and you sell. And your intent, I think, should be to buy and sell real estate as an investor. And then when you fund the deal yourself or through a third party, like us, if we're going to fund a wholesale transaction for you, you had the wherewithal or the means to fund that deal. And I'm pulling those words, by the way, from the Illinois law. Those come from there. So they're questioning, if you're doing assignments, the law questions whether or not you had the intent to buy and sell and whether you had the means to buy and sell. When you do a back-to-back closing, you satisfy both of those.
That's right.
All right, you're up, Josh.
Okay, this question is from Muhammad. He said, my problem is too much information. I don't know which one to follow. I need a simple and straightforward program that I can learn and run with. And I thought, Muhammad, great question. Sounds like you're just getting started. And I think that your problem is not one that you suffer from alone. A lot of people, when they're getting started in something new, they tend to enter, investigation mode, where they go and they learn as much as they can, and they get excited by as many shiny objects as their eyes can see, and they get all these different folks telling them this is the way. And when you have 9 people screaming this is the way to you, sometimes it's hard to figure out, well, which way is the way? Darn it, just tell me. And you hit the desk and you don't know which way to go. But what I'll tell you is this: you're going to have to pick a way and go, or you're going to get nowhere. But once you decide who it is you want to follow, whether it's us or anybody else, or which strategy in real estate you want to use, my advice to you is to forget all others exist. Okay. Just like if you needed to lose 100 pounds for your health, okay, your doctor says, listen, Muhammad, you need to lose 100 pounds or you are at great risk of, dying early. You'd go and you'd talk to a nutritionist, an expert, just like you're looking now at experts in real estate. And you would say, what is your plan? And they'd say it's X, Y, and Z. And you might say, okay, well, let me go talk to a few others. And they'd say, my plan is A, B, and C. And the next one says it's 1, 2, and 3. Well, you can't do A from one person, 1 from one person, and X from one person and put those together. You need to pick a plan and go with it and forget the others exist, because what you'll end up doing is spinning in circles, looking at all the different possibilities of what to do. And then a month later, you've not moved one step forward. And I know that's not what you don't want. It might be fear holding you back from making that choice, but ultimately you need to, face everything and rise, not forget everything and run, right? With fear. So you need to pick away and go and never look back. And I promise you, even if you fail a little bit here and there, and whatever path you pick, you're going to be further along than you are today. And everyone fails in business. Everyone has little hiccups and has to take little detours and make little pivots. But that's part of the world. That's the world we live in. So stop worrying about what if it's not right. What if? Pick a strategy and go with it. Okay. You're up, Cam.
All righty. This one came from Larry. This came from last week and was in the Facebook comments. Remember, the best way to get your questions to us, I mean, you're welcome to leave a question in the Facebook comments, but they're a little trickier for us to expedite and address. The best way to send a question or a comment for us is to comments, plural, at realestatewealthnetwork.com. All right, this is from Larry. Last week, we talked about the states where that are hardest hit by the downturn in the energy industry. Mm-hmm. Larry asked, if those energy industry states will have many stressed, highly motivated sellers, will there be buyers for those properties? It's a great question. You know, if we're in the middle of a buyer's market and so we've evolved from a solid, one of the strongest sellers markets I've ever seen, where sellers were in control, they could name their price, and there were people dumb enough to pay it. Now we're evolving into a buyer's market, and the question is, if it's easy to buy, won't it be hard to sell? Like in a seller's market, if it's hard to buy, won't it be easy to sell? So let me say that again. I want to make sure we're clear, because this is the kind of thinking that I think is valuable to put deep in your cranium and let it sort of mold the way you think about everything. We just left a seller's market where, motivated sellers were hard to find. And, there were lots of bidders on the properties if you were in a competitive market. And so it was a very competitive environment, and the sellers ruled the roost. It was hard to find sellers and easy to find buyers. Well, now we're going to head into, I predict, a buyer's market where it's going to be easy to find sellers and hard to find buyers. And that's exactly what Larry's getting at. If it's easy to buy because there's stress, economic stress, causing people to need to sell, won't it be difficult to sell the house yourself? The answer is maybe. It depends on, first off, what type of housing you're looking at. I can tell you right now that move up and luxury homes, they're the ones, generally speaking, that have, that see the greatest fall, the earliest in the game. They're sort of the head of the spear in the marketplace. And so I would stay away from them. I've already addressed this. Entry-level houses, workforce housing, there will always be a buyer or an occupant. Okay, so what I think you're going to find in as we continue this transition to a buyer's market is that it is hard to sell to a buyer who can qualify for a new mortgage and cash you out, because there's going to be a lot of people with damaged credit. We have 33 million people who have filed for unemployment. Some percentage of them are going to end up with damaged credit. And then there's other people who are going to end up with damaged credit who don't lose their job. Our credit in general is going to fall. And I mentioned this on a previous strategy lab where we pivot our strategies to match the market. Okay. So in the seller's market, when we could find a good deal, we could rehab it and sell it to an end user who could get qualified for a mortgage like that. In a buyer's market, we may need to sell on terms, meaning on, say, a lease option or seller financing of some kind. Okay. I would begin to think about that. Now, if you're doing a rehab, there's two types of rehabs. There's a rehab for retail and a rehab for rental. They're very different. You spend a lot more on a rehab for retail than you do on a rehab for rental. Well, at the entry level end of the market, financing will still be available. It'll be insured by FHA, VA, USDA, and credit scores are now higher. So, there are going to be fewer people who can qualify. It'll still be possible to sell and cash out, but you'll sell more quickly and for more money to a buyer with damaged credit who wants a home, wants to lock in today's price, and then only can do that because you're in the middle. There we are, the real estate investor fixing a broken market. So be thinking about wholesaling to rehabbers who get that. They're the ones that will buy from you again and again. Be thinking about, if you're a rehabber, rehabbing for rental and selling on terms, or holding as a rental. Now you might say, well, but that changes the financial needs, right? So if I'm a rehabber and I buy and sell to an end user and cash out, I don't need a ton of cash available to me because I churn it, right? I go and reuse the money over and over again. I'm churning the money. But if I buy and sell on a lease option, that money's locked in that house until that buyer cashes me out. And it may be 2 or 3 buyers, subsequent buyers, before you actually ever get cashed out. That's the nature of it. So your funding needs change. Now, instead of 3 6-month funding, you need 3 6-year funding. Where are you going to get that in an environment where credit markets are so tight? Private lenders. Someone on a fixed income who loves the idea of a 5 or 6% interest rate when they're making 2 on a CD. That's where. Okay.
There's a theme emerging here, by the way, Cam. I just want to point out to those watching, cash buyers and private lenders are both going to be moving much more forward in your thinking as a real estate investor as you move forward right now. Like if you'd never worried too much about it, you might want to start focusing on finding more cash buyers and finding those private lenders now, because 6 months from now, a year from now, they're going to be very, very important to your business.
Indeed. And the nice thing about the 2 data feeds that we offer, we're not selling here, but just mentioning private lender data feed, cash buyer data feed, is that's coming from public records. So that is verified. Those are verified buyers and verified private lenders. So good resources. But then there's other types of buyers too that we want to also be looking for. We want to be looking for buyers who are known to buy and hold. Those are great buyers for us to wholesale to. We want to be looking for buyers who have a propensity to do some certain exit strategy, right? We want to kind of look for them and categorize them, and so that we take a house and we match it to the category of buyer. Okay, I want to wholesale this one to either a rehabber or a landlord. This one I want to rehab myself and sell on terms, or this one, so we want to be thinking in terms of what's our exit strategy, who are we looking for, and then dig into that sort of category of buyer based on the information we have available to us. The good news is, going into this buyer's market, unlike the last one, there's way more information available to you thanks to things like the cash buyer and private lender data feeds.
That's right.
What strategy, this is Larry's follow-up question, what strategy do you recommend for contacting cash buyers on the cash buyer data feed to find out what they want to buy, so you know what to look for that would be embraced by them? Perfect. It's easier to find a house for a buyer than a buyer for a house. Larry gets that.
Yep.
Good question. Josh, you kind of addressed that already previously.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna refer you back to that response. But suffice to say that what the cash buyers are buying, when they bought it, what they paid for it, is all available to you right there in the cash buyer data feed. It's very easy to pick up on that.
Yep.
All right, go ahead, Josh.
Okay. I've got a couple quick ones here.
We got to wrap up, don't we? We're running out of time, aren't we?
So how do I recruit bird dogs to look at properties in New Jersey? If I live in New York, I would go to Craigslist. That's a great, inexpensive way to start finding bird dogs. If you are currently a member of iFlip, there's built-in system to help you find and recruit those bird dogs right within the system. If not, just go to Craigslist and start looking for bird dogs. Talk to Uber drivers and Lyft drivers in your area when they can get back out on the road. I know the rules in New Jersey and New York are crazy right now. I'm down here in the South, good old South Carolina, where everybody's still driving around and going into restaurants. You can also check out Facebook buyer groups. People, there's investor groups, buyer groups online, RIA type things that you could probably find a few people who are failed investors looking to just make a little money by finding properties too. But tried and true method is Craigslist. We've got hundreds and thousands of clients who've used Craigslist to find bird dogs, and they do it all the time. Second question. This person said, it's Randy, said, hey guys, struggling to narrow down the right areas to focus on with locating properties and marketing to them. Randy, I actually know who you are. I know you have access to the Motivated Seller data feed. Get in there and use the heat maps. Heat maps are a great way to figure out where, and again, as Cam said, the data from the data feed isn't where we're guesstimating where the opportunities are. It's public record and a lot of other things showing us where the actual opportunities are, where the buyers are. If you can look at where the opportunities are and where the buyers are and stack those on top of each other, you can stack those heat maps and really see where the honey holes of opportunity are. And also you have to ask yourself, where do you want to be? Where do you invest? Do you have any altruistic reasons for being there or other reasons for being there? Do you have a mom who lives close to that area where you'd want to visit her? That kind of stuff. But there you go, Randy. Hopefully that helps.
All right. This will be the last one, Josh, right? We got to wrap it up.
Yep, we do.
All right. This one's from Ray. It says, as a closing occurs, how are utilities confirmed without city officials being open? Usually it's a 2-week process to use U.S. mail letters. Good question. So say again, Josh?
I said, when you're done with this, I have a little personal feedback on that too.
Oh, go ahead. Interject.
In my area, they're open. I talked to them 2 days ago. We're actually moving right now, but my office is completely bare. And we're moving to a rental house until our new property is done. And so I've talked to multiple cities, water, electric, sanitation, all that stuff. And they answer on the first call. They're working. And
they are considered essential, and not just in South Carolina, but in the most clamped down state that I know of, New York. They are essential utilities. And you might say, well, who has to verify whether the utilities are paid, and if there's something needs to be put in the closing statement? That's the closing agent's job. They're going to verify property taxes are paid. They're going to prorate them. They're going to verify utilities are paid, water, electric, sewer, trash removal, whatever. Yep. They're going to do that. And all of those services are considered essential. All right. So there you have it. We try to keep these at about 90 minutes. I think we just about hit it right on the mark. Thank you for joining us for Real Estate Wealth Network Strategy Lab number 7. And we will be back next week with number 8. We do these on each Thursday at noon on Facebook. Thanks for joining us on the live Facebook. Yep. And if you're watching this on the blog, thank you for joining us. Leave us a comment. Give us a like. Whoops, just about knocked that off. Give us a like and share with your friends. And thank you for taking time away from whatever else you might have been doing to continue to grow and learn and enhance your business.
Absolutely.
Josh, anything you want to say?
It's been a pleasure. Been a fun one. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of it. And again, remember, send future questions to comments@realestatewealthnetwork.com. Leave your thoughts about this session below, and we'll see you next week.
Stay healthy. Take care, you guys. Bye for now.
Bye.